Welcome to Charts Free webinar series. Today we have Trevor Estelle, VP of ServSafe Alcohol and Regulatory Services, presenting on alcohol public policy trends and mitigating the risks. Welcome, Trevor.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I guess good morning to some, depending on where you are in the country. Yes, my name is Trevor Estelle. I am the Vice President of ServSafe Alcohol and Regulatory Services with the National Restaurant Association. Here to talk to you today a little bit about some of the risks associated with selling and serving alcohol, as well as ways we can mitigate those risks to protect not only our establishment, but also our employees and the community. A little background on me, I've actually been in the industry for over 18 years. I've been behind the bar, I've been a server. I've been on the alcohol server training side of the house for 20 years, so I know quite a bit about it. And we'll cover topics that I'm very familiar with. Some of the topics today we'll cover are types of liquor liability. We'll talk a little bit about the financial implications. We're going to do a dive into the alcohol public policy trends coming out of the pandemic. Some of the risks associated with these trends, as well as some of the opportunities that exist with these trends too. We'll talk about those high-risk situations when it comes to alcohol service. A lot of them you'll be familiar with. Some of the training solutions. And then at the end, there's some policy and procedure development, some tools that you can actually take back to your establishment, to your operation, and perhaps implement or at least dust off some of the stuff you probably already have. And there will be questions and answers. I encourage you to ask the questions throughout. I probably won't get to them to the end. And if I don't get to them at the end, I'll have my contact information up there that'll include my email, my phone number. If you feel more comfortable reaching out to me directly, we can certainly do that. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about types of liability. Before we can even talk about mitigating liability, we really need to understand the types of liability that operators may encounter. And really, there's three primary types. I put criminal and administrative liability in the same bucket. And then where we'll spend a lot of time today is on civil liability. But criminal liability is just that. It's where a state, county, city, or town passes laws about how alcohol is to be served and sold. And you as an operator, as a licensee, I should say, you agree to follow those laws. So some of the things that'll come up with criminal liability, for example, you could be held criminally liable for serving someone that's underage or visibly intoxicated. And this often results in fines or probation. In extreme cases, there might be jail time as well. Administrative liability, on the other hand, is more about the penalties handed out by the state agency that's issuing the alcohol license, like the ABC, the Liquor Commission, the Department of Revenue. It really differs from state to state as far as the agency goes. But these, from an example standpoint, you could be held administratively liable if you don't have accurate permitting records, or if it's a state that requires alcohol server training, you don't have the proper certifications for your staff. Penalties can include suspension of your license or even loss of your license. It couldn't, the server themselves might lose the right to serve alcohol. And a lot of the agencies do have the right to fine you as well. So that's kind of on the criminal and administrative liability side. On the civil liability side, in the simplest of terms, civil liability focuses on compensating individuals when someone is negligent, and someone gets hurt, and then as a result of someone being negligent. And in the alcohol world, there's really two types of civil liability. There's common negligence, which is more about the minimum standard a responsible person should take to prevent problems. These are often based on past court cases, and they cover a wide range of situations. It's not just alcohol. If someone slips and falls in your establishment, or there's an accident in your parking lot of times that'll fall under common negligence. And then there's dram shop liability, or dram shop laws. Dram shop liability specifically makes servers and serving establishments liable for any harm caused to a person whom had served or sold alcohol. Not every state has dram shop liability laws. There's, I think, 40 states now that are considered dram shop states. But those particular laws target servers and serving establishments directly. But regardless of the state you're in, It could be common negligence in the states that do have dram shop laws or dram shop liability. It could be dram shop and common negligence combined when it comes to civil liability. Now, oops. Regardless of the type of liability, the financial implications can be devastating. And I think most of us know this. There's been a significant increase in liquor liability lawsuits, even before the pandemic, honestly, in the last 10 years. Simply do a Google search and you'll find hundreds of cases. Most of them have settled out of court for millions of dollars, oftentimes shutting down the establishment. It usually involves an individual that comes into an establishment intoxicated or is overserved in the establishment, leaves the establishment, hurts themselves or hurts somebody else, and a civil lawsuit results. This case that I just flashed up here is one of the more current cases that came out. It involves an individual that went into a bar in Corpus Christi, Texas, consumed alcohol for 6 hours, left that establishment, ran a red light, and tragically killed 2 individuals. The estate of those 2 individuals sued the bar. This is an unusual one because it actually did go to a jury verdict. And you're seeing that figure correctly. That was $301 billion, which makes it the largest personal injury verdict in the history of the United States. So and to give you an idea, the case before this was actually involved big tobacco. But a bar that overserved is involved in the largest personal injury verdict in the history of the U.S. So, what can we do? What can we do to mitigate these risks? And it's not meant to be a scare tactic. These things happen. They're out there. We're with the National Restaurant Association. There's often a lot of questions we get around the liability aspect. So what do you need to do as an operator to mitigate these risks? And in the simplest of terms, you really need to demonstrate that you're making a reasonable effort to prevent alcohol-related incidents from happening. And we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly those, how do you demonstrate that you're making those reasonable efforts in a bit here. But before I do that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the alcohol public policy trends coming out of the pandemic. And it seems like a weird transition, I know, but a lot of these trends coming out of the pandemic, there's some opportunities associated with them for sure. But all of them do have some sort of inherent risk associated with as well. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can mitigate the risk. So let me go through each one of them I won't be fairly quick, but if you have questions, by all means ask. One of the trends out there is there's this effort across the states to reduce the age to serve alcohol. With 45% of operators, by the way, that was a much higher number coming out of the pandemic. It was 67%, now it's 45% of operators are still reporting labor shortage. Many states are considering or have passed laws to lower the age to serve. In fact, there's been 10 states that have introduced legislation. 7 states have actually passed legislation to lower their state's age to serve alcohol. It's important to note that a lot of the states that are doing this, they're actually rolling it back to the national average. The national average for serving alcohol is 18. So take like Ohio in 2022. I can't remember if it was 20 or 19 they had before, but they simply just rolled it back to the national average at 18. But other states like Michigan rolled it back to 17. So 17 to serve alcohol. And some states are even considering 16 as well. Keep in mind, we are talking about the age to serve alcohol. This is bringing the alcohol from the bar to the table. We're not talking about bartending. We're not talking about mixing alcohol. In some states, that age is different. It's oftentimes obviously higher, or it could be the same in other states as well. So regardless, what do we do as far as operators to mitigate the risk when it comes to this? Well, for one, you have the risk here is you have a younger workforce that's serving alcohol. Oftentimes, this younger workforce is less familiar with the effects of alcohol, perhaps, or the laws around alcohol, or what their responsibility is with alcohol. So, what can we do about that? Well, just like we do with our more seasoned staff, we need to train them, and training becomes even more vital with that younger, more inexperienced staff coming in. So, one way to mitigate it. Next, cocktails to go. This was obviously a really hot one during the pandemic and even coming out of the pandemic. There's now 28 states that have made alcohol to go permanent. Well, another 5 states are allowing it on a long-term but temporary basis. Uh, these transactions are really the wild, wild west of transactions when it comes to alcohol. Every state's doing it a little bit different on what they're allowing, what you can and can't do when it comes to alcohol delivery. But rest assured, enforcement is out. In fact, coming out of the pandemic or just towards the tail end of the pandemic, California ABC did a sting where they targeted 400 drivers. As a result of that sting, there was 214 citations handed out. That's over 50% failure rate. And that's extremely high, as we know in this industry. So these enforcement agencies do talk to one another. A lot of enforcement agencies across the country have set aside funding to target drivers and licenses that are in this space of delivering alcohol. So it's important that you're able to mitigate the risk. And how do you mitigate the risk? Well, again, training. And one of the, this study actually, or this sting operation, was done at the tail end of the pandemic. We as an industry have gotten a lot better. And really what they had learned is there's really a disconnect between the licensee and the delivery driver, whether it be a third-party delivery driver or you're using your own delivery driver. There just was a disconnect on what the store policy was, what the transaction should look like from a cashier standpoint and what it should look like from the point of delivery standpoint. What are the state laws around it? What can and can I do when it comes to delivering alcohol to a residence? And the training's gotten a lot better with that. And that's really how you mitigate the risk. In fact, National Restaurant Association has a ServSafe alcohol delivery program specifically designed to address the delivery piece of if they're in the space, the delivery piece of alcohol. So another one is the rise of digital or mobile IDs. So there's now 30 states total, or I should say 30 states currently or will soon accept some form of digital or mobile ID. This is usually an app created by the state. It's and more oftentimes than not, it's a third-party software such as Apple Wallet or Google Wallet that the ID can be presented. So what does this mean to us as licensees? Well, most states that are allowing mobile IDs are leaving it up to the licensee if they want to accept mobile IDs to purchase age-restricted product. So, you can, as a licensee in most states, you can make your own decision if you want to do it, or you still want to just do physical IDs and leave it at that. Keep in mind your customers, and if they're anything like me, I don't even carry a wallet anymore, right? My wife doesn't carry a purse anymore. Everything's on our phone, from our gym membership to our credit cards, to our Costco card, right? Why not come to expect that our driver's license, our ID, can also be on the phone as well? And so your customers will come to expect it. So I would encourage you to at least look at what your policy is around accepting mobile IDs if they're allowing it in your state. Mobile IDs too, from a liability standpoint, it's a touchless transaction when you're checking an ID in most scenarios. It's a QR code technology that they use. So you don't even have to touch it. So you can verify the person that's presenting the ID, making sure that it's them before delivering age-restricted products such as alcohol. So it's almost, and there's also a record of it that you actually collected the ID and do it. Is it foolproof? No. If it's just like physical IDs, they're not foolproof either as far as preventing underage access, but it is a step in the right direction, probably a little bit more reliable from a liability standpoint when you're checking IDs. So what does this mean from an operator standpoint? Well, again, going back to the theme of the day is training, right? Accepting a physical ID and the training behind accepting a physical ID is a completely different animal than the going through the process of accepting a mobile ID. I mean, like I said, that's in most cases that is a touchless transaction, and everything from how the features to look for, if you do have to handle the phone, what the handling of the phone would look like. All those things really need to be trained in compared to when you're accepting a physical ID. All right, so next, from a trend standpoint, and this one's probably not on everybody's radar, but it probably should be, is there's been a real effort to roll back the legal driving limit from 0.08 to 0.05. And a little bit of a history lesson here. Back in 2016, the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, recommended to states that they lower their legal driving limit from 0.08 to 0.05. Fast forward to 2017, Utah becomes the first and currently the only state to have lowered from 0.08 to 0.05. However, just recently, not just in 2022, but also in 2024, the NTSB kind of doubled down on their recommendations, citing studies coming out of Utah saying that 0.05 saves lives. So what's happened since, there's been 6 states that have introduced legislation to lower the legal limit to 0.05. New York being one that's actually done it twice now. They don't make it through. It hasn't passed in any of these states. Like I said, Utah is the only state. But if they were to pass, from a liability standpoint, it is a complete game changer. Think about, for example, a woman that weighs 110 pounds comes into your establishment, is served a glass of wine, drinks the glass of wine, leaves within an hour. Technically, you could have just overserved that individual. So, we're asking, when we're training, we're asking servers and bartenders to recognize someone that's at 0.08. Can you imagine how more difficult that would be to recognize someone that at 0.05? And a lot of folks are probably saying, well, this isn't going to impact my state, but I think there's probably a lot of people in this webinar that remembers when it was 0.10 and they dialed it back to 0.08. What happened there was the NTSB held highway safety funds hostage until all the states eventually lowered from 0.10 to 0.08. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen here. It's a little bit different animal on how this came about, but it is something to definitely keep an eye on. Next, the legalization of recreational marijuana. What a hot topic. There's inherent risk here, and there's also some opportunities. So there's now 24 states that have decriminalized or legalized recreational marijuana. So what does this mean for operators? What does this mean for your customer, right? You now have customers that are able to legally consume marijuana and come into your establishment. So what's the standard of care around that? Someone that's had an edible perhaps 30 minutes prior to coming into your establishment. What does that look like as far as the standard of care? What about your employees? It's time to dust off your employee handbook and address someone that's consumed an edible an hour and a half before their shift. Is that addressed in your employee manual? Most of it just talks about illicit drugs. They don't really talk about specifically legal drugs such as marijuana. So that's something to take a look at as well. And then on the other side of the coin, what about the opportunities with recreational marijuana? THC-infused beverages is a category that has increased exponentially over the last 6 months. It is a category that's doing far better right now than alcohol as far as growth goes. And there's a lot of operators that are asking the question, well, what can and can I do? And I don't have all the answers for you today. And it's changing constantly, almost weekly. When the federal government introduced the 2018 Farm Bill, there was kind of a loophole in there that allowed for hemp-derived THC, which a lot of states then that had already legalized recreational marijuana kind of jumped on that, and some did regulations around it. Some actually banned it, while others haven't touched it yet. So they're just letting it hang out there. But it is, from a regulation standpoint, it is the kind of the wild, wild west on what you can and can't do from a state to state basis. But it is something to keep an eye on from a responsibility standpoint too, and what the standard of care would be for someone that's consuming THC for the first time versus someone that might be more experienced perhaps with alcohol. What does that look like as well? Because it is a different experience, as a lot of us probably know. So those are the 5. And then in addition to that, we're talking about mitigating the risk around those 5 trends that we were talking about. And these are the everyday trends that we see, these high risk situations, intoxicated patrons, right? Underage drinking, large group promotions that might be, or happy hours that might be going, that kind of, I guess, exacerbate the level of incidents to happen in your establishment. And everyone, the great thing about training, especially classroom training taught by certified trainers, is when you're talking to folks that have been in the industry forever, they all have their stories, and some of them, about the right way to do it, some of them about the wrong way, but they have their stories. In fact, when I was behind the bar for 6 years at a country club, and this was a members only country club, you would have the same customers over and over and over again. And I had a gentleman that his drink was a Dewar's and water was his drink. And I've known him for 4 or 5 years. He had overconsumed one day after coming in from the golf course, clearly visibly intoxicated. He asked for his Dewar's and water, and I felt very uncomfortable as far as serving it. So me being young in the industry, what am I going to do? I knew I was uncomfortable serving. What strategies could I have put in place to handle that refusal situation? What could I have done? In that particular incident, what I did is I knew the friend that he was with, that he had golfed with constantly over the years, and I enlisted the help of the friend. He was in control. He was not consuming alcohol, and said, "Hey, I'm just worried about, certainly worried about my job, but really worried about his safety as well as far as being able to drive home." He was a complete gentleman about it. He helped me out with the situation. But the reason I bring that up is that's just one strategy you can use. Enlist the help of a friend that's with the intoxicated individual. You can go. I mean, this could be a whole webinar on its own when you're talking about high risk situations and how to handle them. But there are out there, and the best way I always find the best way. What I learn is from my peers and from other people that have been in industry for years or trainers talking about their particular scenarios or things that they've come across when it comes to these high risk situations. So what can we do? I would propose when it comes to mitigating the risk, the best way to protect your establishment, your employees, and your community is with alcohol server training. I'm biased. I'm with ServSafe Alcohol. I'm going to put ServSafe Alcohol. We're not the only game in town, though, right? There's other games out there. ServSafe Alcohol, I mean, this is proof that you're demonstrating that you're making a reasonable effort to prevent alcohol-related incidents. And when I say proof, there's a course, there's an exam, there's an assessment that they're certified on. That certification in most states is for 3 years, but it's actual proof and demonstrates that you've made that reasonable effort to prevent alcohol-related incidents from happening. ServSafe Alcohol, and a lot of courses out there, we're going to cover everything from how to properly check IDs, how to recognize signs of intoxication, and we're also going to talk about strategies that they can use to handle refusal situations. But really, at the end of the day, what ServSafe Alcohol does, in short, is it gives your employees not only the skills to identify someone that's getting into trouble with alcohol, but it also is going to give them the confidence and strategies to handle those more difficult alcohol-related situations that they might come across. And that's exactly what good training does in a nutshell. There's also regulatory considerations, the regulatory landscape. And I'm talking specifically here about alcohol server training. This is actually a map that the NIAAA, the National Institute of Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse, comes out with. But and to kind of summarize this map, there's actually 39 states that regulate alcohol server training in some form or fashion. We put them into 3 buckets. When I say we, the National Restaurant Association, there's mandatory states that require some form or fashion of alcohol server training by law. There's voluntary states where they don't require it by law, but there's specific perks if you go through a state agency approved program. Those perks could be affirmative defense, mitigating circumstances. They could be a get out of jail card for free if you're a first time violator, those kind of things. And, mandatory voluntary, we consider those still regulated states. And then there's non-regulated states. And there's only 11 of them out there, but don't be fooled by non-regulated, because a state like Kentucky, Kentucky's non-regulated, but almost every city, town, and county within Kentucky does require alcohol server training. So while the state might not be regulated, at the local jurisdiction, they are regulated. So a lot of times when I put up this map, there's a lot of questions around it. What is, I'm in X state, what are the rules and regulations regarding alcohol server training? Happy to answer them. I'm not going to do a deep dive here today, but ServSafe Alcohol we have a whole regulatory department actually that handles not only our compliance, but the questions that might come up around what's required in a specific state or jurisdiction. And again, ServSafe Alcohol, again, I throw this up. This is kind of our acceptance map. And in ServSafe Alcohol, we offer classroom and online training. Some states, we might only be accepted for online training. Most states were accepted for both. That's kind of the darker blue that's on here. And some states, it's just classroom training. And really, a lot of it has to do with the way that the regulations are set up from a regulatory standpoint. So benefits of alcohol server training, benefits of ServSafe Alcohol. Well, checking the box to make sure that you're compliant with the laws and regulations. in your jurisdiction, obviously very important. One of the most overlooked benefits of alcohol server training, good alcohol server training, is it promotes community safety. And really, what is it about? It's about preventing drunk driving. It's about preventing underage drinking. It's about preventing intoxication. And the really good server trainings do this without oversensitizing servers, right? When I say oversensitizing servers, you don't want someone to go through a course and leave the course and be scared to serve alcohol. That's not what ServSafe alcohol is about. Good server training programs, it's not what they're about either. And that's an important piece. Because there are teetotaler programs out there that really scare servers, if you will, when it comes to serving alcohol. And we need to recognize that 70% of Americans take a drink, and most of them are doing it responsibly. You want a nationally recognized program. You want recognized by major insurance companies. That's a big one. It used to be in the past, you used to get deep discounts as a result of going through ServSafe alcohol on your liquor. I'm talking about your liquor liability premiums. Nowadays, they're not even writing the policy unless you've been through effective alcohol server training. Decreased penalties for alcohol violations. Those voluntary states. That's what I'm talking about here. If you're a first-time violator, sometimes if you've gone through an approved program, there's decreased penalties for your violation. Improved customer service and satisfaction. That's kind of an interesting one. People scratch their head, and this actually came from a customer. They were telling me, "Hey, Trevor, from the time a customer comes into my establishment or comes into my establishment to the time they leave, folks that have been through your program, they're looking at behaviors. They're asking probing questions. They're paying closer attention to the customer, giving that customer at the end of the day a better experience. And it's not related to alcohol. They're just giving them they're looking at behavior more. They're asking probing questions, just giving them a better experience, if you will. And last but not least, underlined in bold, what we've been talking about throughout the webinar is alcohol server training. It's going to reduce your exposure to alcohol liability lawsuits. All those lawsuits that I was flashing on the screen before. Hopefully, if you've been through effective, good alcohol server training, you're going to be less at risk because you've been at the training. However, if a lawsuit is brought against you and you have gone through the training, it's just another layer of protection to kind of mitigate the risk that it comes up with when you are serving and selling alcohol out there. Moving on. So getting into the end, and I know I kind of moved through it quick, but these are some things that you can actually take away when it comes to this webinar. We're talking about policy and procedures development, 4 things that you really could bring back to your establishment tomorrow to really improve the operation. And one is to create and enforce an alcohol service policy. Probably some of you do have an alcohol policy already. If you don't, I encourage you to have an alcohol policy or get an alcohol policy. There's templates that are online. You can definitely ask your attorney on what that policy looks like. And by the way, an alcohol service policy, it isn't a 100-page document. I've seen ones that are 3 pages long. I've seen ones that are 12 pages long as far as the policy goes. The biggest mistake I see with alcohol policies is it usually just sits on a bookshelf and never comes off the bookshelf. It is a living, breathing document that you need to update. We talked about the legalization of marijuana, maybe having stuff in there, or about the legalization of marijuana, what it means for service, or maybe you take a review at some of the incidents you had the previous year, and you update your service manual, your service policy to reflect some of the things that came up. But don't just let it sit on a shelf. It needs to be updated, and more importantly, make sure that your staff knows about it. You might have an alcohol service policy, but if your staff doesn't know about it and hasn't signed off on it, it's not going to be very useful. And not in a court case, but certainly not with the establishment itself from protecting it from a liability standpoint. So make sure you're training on it. Make sure they understand it. Make sure they sign off on it. And this can be done when you're onboarding new employees, having them sign off on the alcohol policy, and just reinforcing it with a training, perhaps. It doesn't have to be long, every 6 months or so, or whatever you see fit. The theme throughout this webinar has been train and retrain your staff and management with alcohol server training. Look at what's in the training, what's being trained to your personnel. How can you, how can you rewrite your store policy or your operator's policy around the training that's taking place? How often do you need to train? When do they need to recertify? making sure that you're taking care of the training aspect. That's a big one as far as being able to mitigate risk. Keep good records. You know, I talked to an attorney friend of mine. He says one of the best defenses against liquor liability lawsuits is good documentation. And when I talk about good documentation, it's about not just having good documentation when it comes to when somebody does and doesn't expire with training. I'm talking about there's what we call a liquor logbook, or sorry, an alcohol incident logbook that every establishment should have, and probably a lot of them don't. An alcohol incident logbook is just that. If you have an incident on your establishment that occurs, there's a logbook that you can go to and you can write the details of that incident, because at that point it's probably pretty clear in your head what happened. Who the witnesses are, what was the incident, you had to cut off so and so at X time, who else was there to witness when you cut the person off, whatever it might be. But those incidents can be logged. And also, in this attorney friend of mine was also saying that it's equally important to document when there isn't an incident. It shows a pattern, right? So great service tonight, 200 people at the bar, there was no incident, and you just sign off no incident tonight, because it shows that pattern. You're not just documenting when the incident happens, you're also documenting, hey, there was no incident tonight. So it's something that I forget the term that attorneys use to it shows a pattern, I guess, if you will, of what's going on in your establishment. Last but not least, being able to communicate with the public, communicating with the public what you're doing. You're part of the solution in your community. Don't be afraid to let law enforcement know. Don't be afraid to let if you're close to a college campus, let the college campus know. Let the local coalition know that's in charge, that's tasked with preventing underage drinking in your community. Let them know that you're part of the solution. Yeah, you're selling alcohol, a legal substance to sell, but you're also part of the solution. You don't want it to fall into the wrong hands. You don't want it to fall into the hands of someone that's visibly intoxicated. And let them know what you're doing. You're training. You're documenting incidents. You have a service policy in place. It shows, all those things show that you're making the effort, that reasonable effort that you need to make to prevent situations from happening. And that really does help from a standpoint of protecting you, giving you that layer of protection if there ever is a liquor liability lawsuit against you. So with that, here's my contact information that I promised. You have my email address and my direct phone number. We're going to open it up to questions here in a minute, but feel free to write this down. If there's questions you're not comfortable asking on through the webinar, feel free to reach out to me directly, whether it be a phone call or an email, and I'm happy to answer. The nice thing about, and I don't have all the answers, the nice thing about working with the National Restaurant Association is I have lots of resources at my fingertips where I can find the answers, whether it's through our public policy department, through our regulatory department, our training content department. I do have those. It's nice to have those resources available to answer some of the questions that might come up. So with that, Tara, I'm going to turn it back to you to see if there's any questions that came through or anything I can answer at this point.
Absolutely. I will. The first question I have is, when it comes to THC infused beverages, can you talk a little bit more about what operators can and can't do?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. THC, it's a hot topic right now. That's certainly our public policy department there's a lot of questions around what you can and can't do as an operator with the classification of license that you have. And really the answer to that big question mark that I put out there really depends on the state that you're in. It really depends on how you're interpreting the law as it applies to you at an establishment. In some cases, a lot of establishments are asking their attorneys or they're contacting the agency directly that's in charge, tasked with regulating marijuana, saying, hey, can I do this? Can I sell THC in beverage? Most of the laws right now, I think there was 85 laws introduced across the country. They were proposed, not introduced, proposed in all the states. And most of the legislation that's being written around THC infused beverage is around labeling. It's around content, whether the actual content that's in there, and it's going to be low content, high content, what's the maximum content, and it's around age restriction, making sure that we understand that it has to be, in most states, it's 21, just like alcohol. So that's a great question, though. I don't have all the answers, but more to come.
Okay, the second question I have is, how can an operator find ServSafe alcohol training and how much is it?
Good question. So ServSafe alcohol, it's delivered in two formats. You have online training that anyone can go to in front of a computer, take the course. There's an assessment at the end, and you get certified. That goes for $30. That's at ServSafe.com. The other way to do it is you can go, we have a whole instructor network. So you yourself can become, and being that it's chart, there might be people on here that are ServSafe alcohol instructors or are interested in becoming ServSafe alcohol instructors. There's a process that you go through to become a ServSafe alcohol instructor. Once you become an instructor, you can go out and train our program. The instructor materials are really the largest overhead to become an instructor. And that includes a PowerPoint presentation along with the videos that are embedded in the presentation. That retails for $30 or $300. And then the participant manuals, when you go out and train, those retail for $22.
Okay, I have no other questions, although I did get a message from somebody saying they were struggling posting in the chat, although I did get some messages in chat, and everyone is supposed to be able to post to everybody. So if no one has any other questions that they can post in Q&A or chat, I think we will end it here. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Trevor. I really appreciate it. This will be on our website before the end of the day.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Chart. Thank you,
Thank
Tara.
you.
Yep.
All right. Bye.